for being the wisest person I know. I don't listen to you very often, but usually you're right. Every book I've written so far, which is 2, my mom has taken the book and edited it and given suggestions, and I've probably taken about 95% of her suggestions, so she's a pretty smart lady. So if you ever got anything you need help with, it really doesn't matter what it is, she can help you. To my dad, it's not very many people that could have a dad that's the best friend, so that's pretty awesome. To my buddy Frank, who helped me through the entire process. And then my publisher, it's hard to say, it's Embedzy Publishing. To Karen, Elizabeth, and Jackie, they weren't able to make it up because it snows in Colorado in May. So, to Jim for announcing me, even though it was ridiculous. Jake Sabat helped me through a lot of this, and all of my students for support, especially the ones that read it. There's a lot of you guys here. I'm going to do all the names, so thanks a lot. Yeah, give yourself a round of applause. Justin, did you just text me? So I was wondering why you were late, but at least you showed up. Alright, so I'm going to talk about a couple things. I'm not actually going to read from the book like Jim said. You can all read from it yourself if you have it, so I don't think my voice is that great. I'm just going to talk about a couple things, so I asked myself what I should talk about tonight, and I figured I should just talk about the questions I get the most. So the biggest question I get is, how does a calculus teacher become a novelist? I think the bigger question is, why in the heck would anyone ever want to become a calculus teacher? The reason I want to do that is because of tonight, because my calculus students are done 2 weeks before everybody else. So for the next 2 weeks I only have to teach 2 classes every day, so that's why I teach calculus. But anything's possible if you're crazy enough to go into public education. So once you've done what I've done, writing a book doesn't seem that far-fetched. I've always been an avid reader. My brother Drew actually got me into reading when I was about in 5th grade, and that was before Harry Potter, so at that time it was about 1 out of every 30 kids actually read books on a regular basis. So Drew got me started there, so it was never too far off. And he was always a writer, and I kind of thought that was his thing to do. But then I started thinking about it a little bit. I've always loved fantasy novels, so the possibility was always there, but I never had like an opus, an idea that I really needed to write. So I've been thinking about it, considering about 4 years ago, and then a couple years ago, the idea sprung up in my head. I was reading a book called Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie. I don't know if any of you have read it before. If you're going to buy one book by Dreamworld, if you're going to buy any other books, buy it from Embedzy, but if you're going to buy a book after that, buy Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie. It's a short book, and it's just about a high school kid who he's going to school, and his mom's pregnant, he's decided it's a boy, and he's writing a survival guide. It was a really cute book, so I read it, and I started thinking, maybe it'd be fun to write a short book like that, and then just get started and feel what it's like to write a book. So I was thinking along those lines, and then Crystal and I were down in Mexico. We booked our tickets the week of the swine flu outbreak, which most people thought was a really bad idea, but some people thought was a really good idea. So we got tickets for like quarter price. By the time we got down there, everything was under control. People were wearing some face masks, but other than that, it was all right. So Crystal was talking to me, and I know most of you know me as a big talker, but she could tell you that I'm usually a pretty good listener. And so she's talking to me and telling me this story, and I don't know what it was about because I was not listening at all. So, which is not normal, and I'm not good at hiding it. So I'm either listening or I'm not. So I was like looking off, glazed off, and she said, not mad of course because we don't fight, but she said, are you even listening to me? I said truthfully, no, I'm not listening to you. And she said, what? I said, I just had an idea for an entire series of books. So the idea, people say they have an idea they have to write, like you hear about Harry Potter and knowing about the entire 7 books, the entire idea just dropped down on my head. And I said, okay, we can talk about what you want to talk about in a minute, but first, I'm going to tell you about my books. And I talked to her for about an hour, and then I came home from Mexico and I told my mom, and the next day I started writing a book, and 3 months later I had a rough draft. So that's kind of how things got started. So I was not always planning on being a writer. I wasn't even a great writer in high school or anything like that. Hey guys. I'm just embarrassing everyone that comes in late like class, so. Except your parents, Matt, they're fine. So if you have an idea, sometimes you have an idea that just has to be told, and that's what I felt like I had, so started writing the book. The next question I get is, what's the book about? So whenever I try to summarize it, it just doesn't sound as good as what I wrote, so I'm just going to read that from you, the short synopsis, which I think is pretty good. It says, Travian James, that's my character, is just a normal kid. Well, almost. During the day, he floats through his high school life in Colorado as a sarcastic, self-aware loner, simply trying to make it through school without falling asleep or making an idiot out of himself. But at night, when Trey falls asleep, he dreams himself into Haven. So this is not described very well in the synopsis, but when he falls asleep, nothing ever happens except instantly he wakes up in a new world. So when he's awake in Colorado, that's his life. Then he wakes up in his dreams at night with no time in between. So he's really never actually sleeping. So that's what it means when it says he dreams himself into Haven. A world filled with magic and wonder, where he is a warrior mage and possibly the most powerful practitioner of magic in the world. Hey, it is his dream, so why wouldn't he be? But all is not well in Haven. An ancient prophecy looms, and Trey is pretty sure he's at the center of the coming storm. Actually, he's quite certain, since it's called the prophecy of the dreamer. Just when a beautiful girl named Claire walks into his real life, and Trey finally gets the guts to talk to her, the dominoes of prophecy start to fall in his dreams. Soon, Trey learns that his worlds may not be as separate as he thinks, and the darkness could take the only girl he's ever loved. Dreamworld is the first novel in the Chronicles of Travian James, and is a story laced with humor, wit, action, and wonder. The only thing more exciting than falling asleep is waking up. So that's my short synopsis about what Dreamworld's about for those of you that have not started it yet. Next thing people ask me is, why would I like Dreamworld? So it's actually something I thought about, believe it or not, before I wrote a book, is if people might actually like it. So I thought a little bit about the books that have really blown up in the last decade, and those books are Harry Potter and Twilight, the series books, and Percy Jackson. And the common thread with all those books, I think, is that 90% of the people in the world, if they pick up a book that's in a fantasy world, they're not going to read it. So they're going to pick it up and say, I don't read this stuff. So most people are not fantasy readers. But the common thread with those books is they all start with a normal person in a normal place, and before anything magic happens, you're invested in that character. So that's how my book starts. It starts with a kid in high school. Come on in. Really, you could come in. No one's going to bite. They had a team dinner, so.
Awkward. Nobody saw that, Jenna. Don't worry.